Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United transfer news. Start of another week. Will we sign anybody? We've only got 4, haven't we, in this January transfer window. We'll be talking about the Wolves lads. We'll also be talking about Dani Olmo as well, Emre Can and a couple of others. But let's start off with this Wolves news then, that United are in for Raul Jimenez and Ruben Neves. Now this actually came out. This was something I was going to talk about this morning anyway, about Raul Jimenez. The Ruben Neves thing is quite interesting. It's like a double story from Goal, which is a website that talks about sport, obviously, and football. And they're saying that basically initial talks have started with Jimenez, but there's also interest in Ruben Neves for a January transfer. I've got to say straight away, these sort of stories are the ones that bother me the most, because they're just absolute fantasy. There's more chance of us winning the league than of us signing, or of Wolves selling Ruben Neves and Jimenez, their best 2 players in January. It's just not going to happen. Ruben Neves would be very welcome at Manchester United. I don't know whether he's this great player that everybody thinks, but at 22, he's one of the better box-to-box midfielders in the league outside the top 4. And he's definitely, I think if he came into United, you could argue that he's better than anything that we've got. And at the moment, that's a very big tick in the box. But I don't see United going for Ruben Neves, and I don't see them getting him in January. But I think Raul Jimenez is interesting, because this sparked my ears up on Saturday after the game with Wolves, where Nuno was asked about Raul Jimenez and said, well, Ollie's not spoken to me about this transfer, so it's news to me. However, anything can happen in the January transfer window, but we're happy to have Raul Jimenez. And that's quite interesting when you think about what the Aston Villa manager said in relation to Grealish. He's not going anywhere, whatever, you can look but you can't touch. But Wolves openly saying, well, anything can happen. So to me, that suggests they would be looking at a deal for Raul Jimenez if the money is right. Then Ollie was asked about it after the game, and he said, we don't talk about these sort of things. So there is potential for a deal for Raul Jimenez there. And to be honest with you, he's not a player that I've ever thought, oh, let's go and get him. But watching him this season, he averages a goal every other game, which is decent in a Wolves side. He's quick, he's tall, he's got good technique, and I think he would be, looking at what we were looking at with Erling Haaland. There was talk of Mandzukic. I mean, he would be ideal. I think he's better. He offers he's a better player than Haaland, and he's a better player than Mandzukic, I think, at the moment. And he would immediately come into the team. My only reservation would be, what do you pay for him? Because he's still got a couple of years left on his contract, and he's 29 in May. So, if you're getting him for 40 million, happy. But if are they gonna want 60, 70 million? In which case, I'm like, ugh, that's we've done these sort of things with Lukaku. So yeah, I like Jimenez. I've got to say, I do like him. I would welcome him at Manchester United, and I think he'd give us something different that Martial, Rashford, Greenwood, they don't give us, because he is physical and he is tall, but he's also quick, and he's a good footballer. So I rate him. He scores lots of goals for Mexico as well, international. So I like him. I do like him. I would like us to go for him, but if I'm absolutely honest, I've just got a feeling he's going to end up at Chelsea and not United, even though he would be good for us. So yeah, Ruben Neves, I just don't know. I don't see that. Maybe in the summer, but there's this myth I always talk about, this George Mendes. Oh, he's got a great relationship with United. I don't think he has. I don't think he has. We got Mourinho, who is his client, and we never brought any George Mendes client players in. I mean, Fabinho is a George Mendes client. I mean, we don't actually get many George Mendes clients in. So, maybe that's part of the reason. But look, there's no way you're getting Jimenez and Neves in January, and this is a January transfer window. So we may as well bin off the Neves and hope on the Jimenez. But again, I just don't think we'll get him as much as I would like him. What about you? Let's also talk about Nicola Zaniolo, who is a Roma attacking midfielder. Now, I wouldn't have spoken about this lad. I've got to be honest. He's 20. I think he's 20 years of age. Doing very well for Roma, attacking midfielder. He's over 6 foot. There's talk in Italy that he can become one of their great players. Not many players leave Italy to come away, and we've been linked to players like Barella, Bernardeschi over the last couple of years, which I really would have liked us to sign, but they've both gone to clubs in Italy, which is traditionally what happens. Most Italian players do stay in Italy. There are a few exceptions like Verratti, but yeah, so I was interested by this Zaniolo one. So the only reason I talk about this is because Manchester Evening News yesterday did an article talking about the 3 players that United are most likely to sign according to the bookies based on the odds. And Zaniolo came up as one of those players. I think he was like 4-1, which is quite good. Maddison was around 6-1, and Emre Can was 3-1. So Emre Can, according to the bookies, is the most likely player for us to sign, which I would be happy with. But Zaniolo, a lot of you won't have heard of him. As I say, he's an attacking midfielder for Roma. Quite tall, physical, good, can score a goal, can create a goal. Be an interesting signing for United. But I only mention it because of this article that I'd read. We've been tentatively linked to him. And Roma may well want to cash in at some point, but I don't feel that Roma are going to want to sell him in January. The only thing that made me think is, Chris Smalling, they want Smalling. Look, there's a logical reason why United would sign him, because he's a good player. There's a logical reason why we could do a deal, because they want to do a deal with Smalling. But let's not forget, United's reputation of signing young European talent isn't the best. We tend to avoid that and look at what's going on in the Premier League. So I don't fancy it myself, but it would be remiss of me not to mention it. Also, another young player on the continent that we were linked to last summer, Dani Olmo, who is actually Spanish but playing for Dinamo Zagreb. There's talk of Barcelona wanting him and a few others. But United linked to him again. Again, this is another player that can play right, left, attacking midfield. Creative player, lots of flair, gets lots of goals and lots of assists. United linked with him again. Again, it's just another player that I feel I have to mention, because you just don't... This January transfer window is just such an uncertainty. But again, I would feel the same, that I would like United to be looking at a player like Zaniolo or a Dani Olmo, but I just don't think we are looking outside of England. I don't. And I would love to be corrected on that. We were talking about Bruno Fernandes last night, and look, until he holds the shirt up, and I don't think he will, I just won't believe it, because I just don't feel that United... I think we've got scouts all over Europe, but I don't think Solskjaer and his coaches know enough about Europe to, say, let's spend the money there, which is part of the problem. I think it's why he keeps saying, I've got the money there to spend if I want to spend it. And I don't think he wants to risk it on players that he doesn't really know anything about. But obviously a lot of you lot do know what players like in Europe. And I know a few as well. And I think that these players... Dani Olmo would be an interesting one. He's going to go probably to Barcelona. Maybe Man City will go for him. So, there's a hint there that he's a high calibre player. And he's a young player as well, and I think he's got a high trajectory. So look, I'd be very excited if United went for a player like that. But I don't actually think we will. I think this is not a player that we're going to look for. But I mention him, of course, like I did Zaniolo, because you just don't know. And I think that January transfer window is like that for it, isn't it? And just going back to Emre Can there, if Emre Can is the most likely player we're going to sign with the bookies, well, we know Can's available. We know Juventus want to sell him. We know we could get him for about 30 million. We know he's like in his mid-20s. We know he's Premier League proven. And we know he can play a number of midfield positions. He's absolutely perfect for what we need at the moment. And you would ask the question, if we were in for him, why have we not got him in now? He could come straight into this team. We've got no Pogba. We've got no McTominay. Fred is exhausted. Matic is not very good. Pereira can't play there. We need a midfielder yesterday, so why would we not go and do that deal? And again, we might be favourites with the bookies to sign Emre Can, but I don't actually think we are going to sign him, because I think it's too obvious a signing to go and do. He also gives you the experience that we need. But why would you not just go and do it? What are you bartering about? Just go and do it. So again, I think it's such a hard transfer window to know. I personally think we'll sign somebody, but I'm not going to make the mistake of going, we're going to get that player, we're going to get that player, because, Haaland, fingers burnt, Fernandes, fingers burnt. United's, until they're holding up a shirt, that's probably the safest thing to do with United, because there was so much confidence that we would sign Erling Haaland, and we got snubbed. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Jedson Fernandes is floating around again. That's looking more like West Ham to me, but that deal can be done, and Benfica want it done. He's a midfielder. Again, he's around 20, isn't he? And he's a foreign player. I don't think we'll be looking at that. There's also talk of, let me get the name right. Yeah, it's Martinez. Get the name that. Lautaro Martinez from Inter Milan. There's talk of a swap deal with Paul Pogba. Now, I think with Paul Pogba, I'm sure we're going to be mentioning him a lot every single day of his time at United, because that just seems to be the way with Pogba. There's always something to talk about with Pogba. But as I've said before with Pogba, he is injured till after this transfer window closes. Nobody's going to sign Paul Pogba injured. And United are not going to sell him in January. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer reiterated this on Saturday night again, that Pogba's going nowhere in January. I said this 3 weeks before the January transfer window opened, because United have been telling anybody who wants to listen, we're not selling Pogba in January. Ole said it. He's not going anywhere. So Inter Milan have sort of entered the fray recently around Pogba. And Inter Milan do like our players. They want Matic. They've had Sanchez. They've got Lukaku. I mean, that's one for the future. What are we going to do with Alexis Sanchez? I mean, he could be back at the club in the summer. But don't depress yourself on a Monday morning. So, yeah, I mean, look, Pogba, Inter Milan, he loves Juventus. Why would he go and play for Inter Milan? I don't see that happening at all. I think it's Real Madrid for Pogba in the summer. I don't really have anything more to say about that. I'm tired this morning. I think we're all tired as United fans, aren't we, as we go into this week. Ollie will be doing his press conference at 10 o'clock, so we'll be talking about that. And I'll probably just do a combined press conference and preview at lunchtime, in fact, with regards to that. Probably do it about midday. Man City tomorrow, which... I don't know. But what I would say about the transfer window is that we were talking about this last night with Bruno Fernandes, that United apparently are going to send scouts out to Portugal to watch Porto, Benfica and Sporting Lisbon to see if they can get anybody for the January transfer window. I mean, if you believe that, and why wouldn't you, it's January and we're looking for players. What we've been doing for 3 months. I think what has happened with United is they wanted Haaland. Haaland was going to be the January transfer signing. That's fallen through. There is no plan B. Like, there's no plan B with anything at United these days, even on the pitch. And with the midfield, they weren't going to sign a midfielder. Amazingly, they weren't going to sign a midfielder. And then Pogba and McTominay get long-term injuries and they're like, oh shit. We definitely weren't going to sign a midfielder this January transfer window. We just weren't. And it's only because of these 2 major injuries that we're now looking to do it, which is why they're desperately chucking scouts all over Europe, which is why we're not signing the Emre Cans or anything like that, because we had no intention of signing a midfielder, which is why we're not able to go, we need a midfielder, let's sign that midfielder, because we've not been looking for one. I think we're looking for one now, and everything's having to be fast-tracked, which is why they're going around watching lots of games and saying this is what we think. But of course, a lot of Europe's had an international break and had a winter break. So United are ill prepared for this transfer window, is the truth. It doesn't mean we won't bring somebody in, but I think if we're going to bring somebody in, it's going to be the back end of the month, because I think they're desperately scouting around now looking for players. And I think that's the situation. I don't think there was any intention of bringing a midfielder in, which is appalling, considering Herrera and Fellaini have been gone for nearly a year now and not replaced. But it doesn't seem to be... Well, there isn't one. There is no plan to bring a midfielder in, because if they did, we'd be on it, and we're not. And that's the situation. But I'd very much welcome Jimenez. I think that is something that sounds like it could be done, quite simply because Wolves are saying anything can happen. And why would you say that? You'd just say, well, no, he's not for sale. So I think Wolves have given a hint. They've dropped a hint there with Jimenez. Will United take that hint up? Because I think he'd improve us. And I wouldn't normally say, let's go and buy a player who's going to be 29 in the summer. But I think his experience, he offers something different, and I think he'd be quite happy to come to United and be a rotational player as well. So I think Jimenez, for me, it would be a good one. Smash a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and we will be back at lunchtime with that Man City preview. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.